All right. Hello, everyone. This is the season finale of Reanimate This podcast.
Happy end of season one, everybody.
Hello, yes. Happy end of season one.
Oh, congratulations on the end of season.
Yes, so I'm here with Scout Tafoya once again.
Hello,
and,
thanks for having me.
And I'm here with a mentor of mine from back when I attended City College of New York, Emmett Goodman. So, Professor Goodman, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Emmett Goodman. Jay was indeed one of my students at City College of New York a couple of years ago, and I still teach at City College. And among other things, I animate, I make short films, and I teach. And I can name a few other things that are pretty irrelevant, but that's all you need to know.
So when I was a student for his class, we talked about mixed media, and basically what we have learned is how to make your own Who Framed Roger Rabbit, at least in a short form with Adobe's After Effects and among other things. And I learned how even like since the beginning of the history of animation, animators experimented with animation characters interacting with live actors. That's one of the most interesting thing about it, and the tradition continues even to this day. So I don't know. Is that the overall summary of your class, right?
Yes, I did. That is a topics course that I taught at City College. I actually taught it a couple times. And yeah, I mean, overall, the results from that class were pretty successful, I have to say.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite class that I took. It was also like my own last semester. And I made a short film with Meredith doing the voice. It's called The Clash Between Good and Evil, and I eventually expanded that into 1 minute short, and then I'm planning to turn that into a feature film. But I feel like I'm still in middle of the writer's block for that one. But it's got to be even more wild. And long before that, I made a experimental mixed media short with Scout here and Meredith here, and this is also perhaps unintentionally a reunion with the actors that I worked for this short that I made called The Tragic End of Rodney and Madlyn U. Although Anthony Rodriguez is not here, but that doesn't matter. But it's weird to see how Scout and Meredith get to sort of talk to each other directly maybe for the first time.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah,
although
I mean, we've
followed each other on. Sorry,
we chat a little bit on social media, but like I feel like this is the first time we've ever been able to have a quote unquote face-to-face conversation. So hello, Scout.
Hello.
And hello, Emmett. It's very nice to meet you.
Sorry, very nice to meet you too.
Yes, sir. Thanks for hanging out with us. Yeah, it's very cool to talk to everybody.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, Scout acted as the main narrator of my short film because I really liked his voice for the Unloved series. And just to recap, the Unloved series is your video essay series about the underappreciated movies and movies that are overlooked, and it's still going on to this day on rogerzebra.com.
Yeah, we're closing in on I think our 12th year of doing this, which is wild. I've put together an ever expanding massive canon of movies that I really like that nobody else seems to. Although there's a handful of films that do have their defenders, but it's been a wild ride, and I have a bunch of other video essay series, Mostly they are exclusive to my Patreon, patreon.com/HonorZombie. I wrote a book about John Ford. I wrote a book about Anthony Mann. I wrote a book about Toby Hooper. And I also cater. So thank you.
Yes, and so to bring back to the Tragic End of Rodney and Madlyn U, and back then I didn't watch the entirety of this movie Dogville, but however I was very intrigued by the production design, and that's why the dilapidated mansion that described in the original Edgar Allan Poe story, The Fall of the House of Usher, it's not it's not doesn't even look like a ruin. It's more like an empty room. With just I think as I could remember, like the living room just written on the floor, and I made that with a cardboard box, which I'm gonna segue into talking about Dogville.
I see a beautiful little town in the midst of magnificent mountains. A place where people have hopes and dreams.
What is the movie Dogville about? The movie begins with a top-down view of Dogville, a small isolated town near the abandoned silver mine in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. For us, the audience, Dogville looks like an outline of the map drawn on the floor with white chalk, and we can see what residents are doing inside their homes, as Antonio Vivaldi's orchestral music plays in the background. Our narrator, John Hurt, tells us that the tale of Dogville will be a sad one.
This is the sad tale of the township of Dogville. Dogville was in the Rocky Mountains in the US of A. Up here, where the road came to its definitive end near the entrance to the old abandoned silver mine. The residents of Dogville were good, honest folks, and they liked their township. And while a sentimental soul from the East Coast had once dubbed their main street Elm Street, though no elm had ever cast its shadow in Dogville, they saw no reason to change anything. Most of the buildings were pretty wretched. More like shacks, frankly.
Then the camera zooms into the radio in the residence of a retired doctor, Tom Edison Sr., played by Philip Barker Hall, who is in his rocking chair reading The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain while listening to the music from the next room. The radio then plays President Franklin D. Roosevelt's speech, which reveals its time setting of the year 1933. Tom Edison Sr. asks his son, Tom Jr., played by Paul Bettany, to turn off the radio in his room.
That afternoon, the radio was playing softly. For in his dotage, Thomas Edison Sr. had developed a weakness for music of the lighter kind.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. My friend,
Tom, do me a favor, will you? The radio? Just because the music's over and you might risk hearing something useful?
Tom is an aspiring philosopher who wants to become the community's moral leader like his father. He goes outside for a walk and hears gunfire from a distance. He encounters a woman in a mink coat, and her name is Grace, played by Nicole Kidman, who is running away from gangsters, whose Don is played by James Caan.
Hey, lady! I wouldn't go up there if I were you. I know the mountain well. Doubt if I'd get away with my life. It's a very nasty drop.
Is there another way?
Yeah.
Where?
Back down the way you came from. Back down to Georgetown. Why do you need to get up the mountain? Did it have anything to do with those gunshots?
Help me, please.
Here, hide in mine. In there.
Hey, where's this road headed to?
Nowhere. It's It's a dead end. If you want the pass, you'll have to turn around, go back by way of Georgetown. This place, it's called Dogville.
Dogville?
Yeah.
Well, figures. Stupid name if I ever heard one. Hey, we're looking for somebody.
Hey, really? Who might that be?
My boss wants to talk to you.
Young man.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking for a girl. She may have made her way to your town in her confusion. I don't want any harm to come to her. You see, she's very precious to me.
Well, sir, nobody's been through Dogville. Moses would have barked. He's very suspicious of strangers.
Oh, that's very wise of Moses. Please take my card, and if perhaps you see a stranger, then give me a call. I am in a position to offer a considerable reward.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
When the gangsters leave, Tom asks the townspeople to help Grace, hoping that this could give them a moral purpose.
I'm sorry, Tom. You're going to have to come up with something better than that. The whole country would be better served with a greater attitude of openness and acceptance.
You're not suggesting that we all wouldn't help out if somebody needed help?
No, that's not the point. That's not the point.
Care for human beings up here.
We'd probably never find out. Since nobody seems to want to admit that there's a problem, let me illustrate. Now, I'm not going to use something that's already happened. I'm going to use something that's just about to happen.
And after providing a quick summary of the events of the previous evening to the astonished people of Dogville, Tom went down to the mine to retrieve the fugitive from her hideaway.
Allow me to introduce Grace. Grace, these are the citizens of Dogville.
Hello.
Hello.
Tom has told us about your predicament, miss.
I really don't want to put any of you in jeopardy.
Why don't you just go to the police? They can take care of gangsters. It's their job.
I don't know that that's such a good idea. In the transportation business...
These men, they have powerful connections. Even with the police.
You think we should give sanctuary to a fugitive? A fugitive that gangsters want to get a hold of? Well, that would put us in a pretty pickle.
Easy, Claire. Think of your ass, man.
Well, Dogville's a good place to hide, that's for certain.
Exactly. The only way up here is Canyon Road.
As Vivaldi's Nisi Dominus plays in the background, people of Dogville feel conflicted about Grace, then later agree to help her only under the condition that she will do hourly chores for each resident for 2 weeks.
When she suddenly sensed what would best have been described as a tiny change of light over Dogville.
They're keeping an eye on you. And if you love them already, they might need a little persuading. You got 2 weeks to get them to accept you.
Make it sound like we're playing a game.
It is. We are.
After 2 weeks, all of Dogville gave a unanimous vote for her to stay, even when the police put up the missing poster of her on the wall.
Grace counted. So McKay must have voted for her after all. And if so, why not Chuck too?
Chuck.
Chuck.
Everyone. I think they like you here.
Then during the town's 4th of July celebration, the police come to the town again and replace the missing poster of Grace with the wanted poster of her, accusing her of bank robbery.
Should have been celebrating myself if this hadn't come up. Had to change this missing person notice. There's that lady again. That's why she disappeared. She's wanted in connection with some bank robberies on the West Coast.
When did these robberies take place?
Last couple of weeks.
All right.
You don't get much news up here, do you?
My dad's radio only plays music.
All I know is they say she's dangerous, and there ain't one with any information about her. She better call us pronto. That's the law.
The people don't feel sure whether to cooperate with the police by turning Grace in for her alleged crime, or to stand with Grace. They decide to keep her under the condition that she would work harder as a quid pro quo. From there on, the townspeople begin to mistreat Grace and reveal their exploitative nature through a series of abuses.
So this is where we're gonna share our opinion about this movie and discuss this main theme and this very, very unusual production, which has a deep root in the avant-garde theater, and how Lars von Trier used that technique to tell this story, the story that is inspired from Bertolt Brecht's song about vengeance and fighting back against your exploiter. Before I get to share my perspective, who would like to share first?
I'll go first.
I guess. Oh, sorry. You go ahead, sir.
Well, I guess I'll go first. Let me start this off by saying I've actually only seen I've seen the movie Dogville only once in my life. And at the time that I saw it, and I kind of still am, I'm very cautious when watching Lars von Trier's movies. But I do have a very clear image of how the movie looked and what the movie was about, and I mean that already tells you a lot about how it was made. And I mean the way the movie is set up is as you say pretty avant-garde. Definitely very out there. Definitely very non-commercial, despite the amazing cast of A-list actors that it has. And I would definitely say that anybody who's like interested in film or like all sorts of cinema, it's definitely a movie you should watch. I mean, I'd say any of Lars von Trier's movies are definitely worth watching. What your takeaway from it is definitely, I think you're not going to meet any two people who have the exact same opinion of Lars von Trier's movies.
That's accurate. Jay and I have this conversation a lot, and how much I like his movies, but as a person, I am like, Lars von Trier, why are you? Just, sir, just make movies and shut up.
Oh, that ship has sailed. Although, we can, or anyway, I will pass on, well wishes and safe travels, because he's been in terrible health for a number of years now, and I sort of anticipate us hearing, sadly, that he will have passed away before too long, just based on the reports that were coming out.
I didn't realize that. Well, Lars von Trier,
he has a Parkinson's.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, now I feel really bad for saying that. So, Lars von Trier, I hope that you fix your heart. Fix your
Right.
heart,
I mean,
sir.
you heard the stories about him, dealing with depression. That was a symptom for his Parkinson's, as it turns out.
Oh, well, and Melancholia, I thought was a very accurate depiction of depression. Like I said, I'm not insulting the man's movies.
No, of course.
And I don't wish death on him. That sucks. But
Oh, of
sir,
course
please stop like doing Nazi apologetics.
Yeah, I think good with the bad. He can no longer make his, to me, very thoughtful art, but he also can no longer make a public spectacle of sort of taunting liberalism, which certainly he excelled at. But yeah, I think by virtue of coming of age when I did, there was already a pretty decent backlog of DVD releases for a lot of Lars von Trier stuff, and he became one of those directors like David Fincher, like Jean-Pierre Jeunet, where I was just sort of intrigued to see what happened next because it felt as though in the 2000s there hadn't really been an established aesthetic. There were things that sort of seemed to be vying for control of that, but the Michel Gondrys and Spike Jonze and uh, Tom Tickfers of the world, they were sort of all pushing pieces this way and that on the kind of board, and uh, Lars von Trier definitely seemed like the one of them who had no fear about anything. And that comes with good and it comes with the bad, because to me, Dogville, as wonderful and expressionist and singular as it is a film very, very hamstrung by his kind of bizarre, stunted vision of America that he's trying to see through uh, both American theatrical tradition, but also, as you say, Brecht and Ingmar Bergman. This kind of three-headed the Hydra or Cerberus or whatever that always tortured him, where he needed people to suffer because he saw nothing but evil in the world, and so he made these movies that are so explicitly and so painfully and torturously about the sort of destruction of the innocent. And it made a lot of his movies no fucking fun at all. As much as I really love his work, and I do, I when you asked me if I wanted to come on and talk about Dogville, I'm like, yeah, because I have that movie committed to memory, and not because I like it.
Oh, interesting.
It's a really tough fit.
Because
But
like
So, yeah, Meredith, what are you
visually,
trying to say?
I was gonna say visually, I thought it was amazing, and I
Yeah.
appreciated some of the themes, but like, shit, just and I mean, of course, I'm looking at a 2003 movie through 2025 eyes, so context and everything. But good fucking lord, does he rely a lot on sexual violence as a narrative crutch? And a tension builder and things like I was like, this is a lot.
it's again, it's he had this thing, this like chip on his shoulder about the way that you expose the kind of corruption of society is through deification of either the infantilized woman or the sacrifice of the worldly woman. Going back as far as The Element of Crime, his first film, there's a woman named played by an actress named Meme Lai who usually made Italian cannibal films. Of course, she appeared in Element of Crime, but she's just this sort of sleepwalking sex worker who is kind of a mirror of the protagonist, but doesn't really seem to have much of an inner life beyond the trope. And then, you know, what the hell's the name of the movie? The 1996 one, Breaking the Waves. Breaking the Waves, really, really nice to look at sometimes, but then also just about this woman who starts, basically like kills herself by virtue of taking on risky sexual predilections in order to save her husband from, a horrible injury. It's all nonsense. It's all just a very strange, admittedly very Scandinavian approach to the self and religion. And, at the end of that, literal bells sound from heaven to welcome her It's insane, and I don't know where the hell he got it, and I don't know what the hell is wrong with him. But then, like Dancer in the Dark, same thing. It's just nonstop torture, and Dogville is the same thing. It's it's you're sacrificing somebody for I don't even know what to bring the earth closer to heaven or something. But I still don't really. And the thing is, I would spend more time trying to wrap my head around it if I liked the movie, but I just don't.
So, okay, this is where I'm going to share my opinion, and it's going to be very personal, and it may sound like I'm venting out.
Oh,
so, Dogville so far is my personal favorite from Lars von Trier, mainly because it relates to my life experience from birth to now. Watching this movie, I don't know, there's something about it that just hit close home for me. Like, I see the residents, how they treat Grace, who's played by Nicole Kidman, and okay, not exactly very severe, but when how they behave around her, how they talk to her, and how they cover up other people's sin, it reminds me of people that I grew up with. I always remind my own family members, some of them whom I personally estranged, and including Grace's side of family, including her. Okay, I'm not gonna. All right, you know what? Spoiler: her mobster father, who is played by James Caan, the late James Caan. There's part of him reminds me of my own parents.
So I'm arrogant. I'm arrogant because I forgive people.
My God. Can't you see how condescending you are when you say that? I mean, you have this preconceived notion that nobody can possibly attain the same high ethical standards as you, so you exonerate them. I cannot think of anything more arrogant than that. You, my child, my dear child, you forgive others with excuses that you would never in the world permit for yourself.
Why shouldn't I be merciful? Why?
No. You should be merciful when there's time to be merciful. But you must maintain your own standards. You owe them that. The penalty you deserve for your transgression, they deserve for their transgressions.
They're human beings.
No. Does every human being need to be accountable for their actions? Of course they do. You don't even give them that chance. And that is extremely arrogant. I love you to death. But you are the most arrogant person I have ever met. And you call me arrogant. And almost every resident reminds me of the group of friends I was with. I don't know. I'm not gonna name names, but this character named Ben, the truck driver guy, who is played by Jelko Ivanek. Sorry if I mispronounced the actor's name. He looked exactly the person that I knew, person from that circle I was once in. It was it almost resembled him some way. I mean, oh man. I don't know. I want to look. I know that I got very personal with this, but still, but it was just like, oh my god, it reminds you too much of my own life, minus the whole sexual violence. But still, I mean, so I grew up in Missouri, and this small town feel almost resembling that one as well. And I kind of, the more I think about the theme, and the more I think about how these people, talk to each other, interact with each other, it reminds me of this. I think it's this observation that people have made about the human condition in the United States, the current day United States itself, that because we are living in a capitalist society, all human relationships are monetary. Mm-hmm. And for Grace to get accepted in the society, she has to prove herself that she worked hard and she could earn money and live a life for herself.
And the more I think about it, it's also very timely as well. Does it remind you of how people today treat migrants and refugees in this country?
I mean, absolutely. Dogville focuses on a very, very, very timeless theme of we fetishize the small town charm and small town living and all that, but they're oftentimes just as bad, if not worse, as them city folk. I grew up in the suburbs. Um, Even though it's not necessarily a small town, it was an incredibly homogenous place. Arcade Fire actually won a whole ass Grammy for writing an album about how much that particular suburb sucked. But no, it's a timeless theme. And I didn't dislike this movie. I didn't hate it. I was kind of like, I thought that, again, the reliance on sexual violence is as the only thing that the men could do to screw with Grace, kind of, like I said, it was a little much. Find some variety. I'm not saying never put sexual violence in a movie because I don't agree with that, but I am saying maybe mix it up a little bit. Other things can happen to her.
Emmett, before I jump in with another tirade, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I actually just learned right now because I haven't really watched any of von Trier's work in a long time, but up until recently, I thought the film was part of the whole Dogma 95 manifesto, which apparently it wasn't. But I was wondering if one of you were gonna mention anything about that.
Absolutely. So, yeah, the Dogma 95 manifesto was an undertaking after von Trier had made a movie of his called Europa, which is this very heavily stylized kind of post-war noir about the creeping specter of fascism throughout Europe. It has this, just this kind of like whole continental place called Europa where all of the crimes of the 20th century happened. So it was like too much. And so then he makes Breaking the Waves, which pares all of his aesthetics down even further. And then he and Thomas Vinterberg coined this thing, the Dogma 95 Manifesto, which is movies where you're not allowed to, you can't have crazy genre plots. You can't go to space. You can't, have an explosion or a car chase or anything like that. It has to just be something that you could prove would happen, and you have to film it as it's happening with a mini DV camera. And
I mean, yeah, aesthetically, it was basically supposed to be like anti big budget, anti special effect. Everything has to be real for real in these movies, and I mean, when I first learned of it, I was already a teenager when I first learned of this Dogma 95 thing, and being, the selfish American that I am, I just was like, well, I don't want to watch that. I want to see the Star Wars movies and everything. I want to make the movies that Tim Burton makes. That was like my attitude back then, and it wasn't until many years later that when I started to like really explore, directors like David Lynch and David Fincher and those guys, that I finally tried to give Lars von Trier's work a try, and I bulked away from from a few of them just because like they were like they're very extreme movies, they're very depressing movies, and as you guys pretty correctly described, he has a very nihilistic view of the world, and his movies are no less nihilistic.
So there's a movie that I think about when I think about Dogville, which is Peter Greenaway, who was kind of Lars von Trier before Lars von Trier, who had a similarly bleak worldview, but he was interested in essentially making cinema something greater than just one more art. He wanted it to showcase film and opera and literature and architecture and food. Like he thought it could be this sort of all-encompassing art form, and it made him no friends. By the time I was sort of aware of movies, his career had basically been he was basically a gallery artist by the time I kind of caught up with him. But he made a movie in 1996 called The Baby of Macone, which is essentially the same thing as Dogville. There's no set. Everything happens sort of. There's curtains that guide you from bit to bit. Everybody's dressed in these kind of Straboyer gown things, these sort of shapeless costumes that don't project any particular time. And it's the same thing where it's very much about how you build society through the things that you take away from it and the kinds of people who get to have a say in what happens and why. And all sort of built in with this very stern religious belief. And I appreciate something like Dogville on paper, but the monotony of the treatment becomes the thing that bothers me, which is why ultimately, he's in the middle of his career making the movies that define him, Dance for the Dark and Breaking the Waves and this. And then in his late career, he starts to make movies about whether or not any of that was a good idea, and basically admitting through these movies that he hasn't actually touched the hem of the personal, that he hasn't really discovered himself through the expression of his films. And that's why right in a row, Melancholia and Nymphomaniac and House That Jack Built are the films that actually start to sort of uncover the very problematic thing that you're talking about, Meredith, which is like, why was he using this as a crutch? And it's because he had all these unexplored neuroses kind of rotting away under the surface, where he was a provocateur for so long that he never actually figured out what he thought and felt.
That's so real. that nails it, Emmett. Yes, thank you for clarifying. I am not as familiar with the context of his work so much as I am just the work itself, if that makes sense.
Sure, of course.
Here's the one 2 cents about the Dogman 95. So I thought that this exists because the filmmaking has been democratized during the 90s, and this was sort of encouraging people to go out, make movies with camcorder with your friends. But even with a minuscule budget, even with the lack of prop, you still make something out of it. And that sort of evolved into the mumblecore movement, even though nobody likes to call it mumblecore. And it came out, and then great Greta Gerwig, Joe Swanberg came out of that movement. And oh yes, and the Duplass brothers. And recently, the Dogman 95 has been relaunched, and it's now called Dogman 25, and it's trying to turn the DIY filmmaking back to its root, back to its like a low budget root, and currently being spearheaded by like 5 Danish filmmakers up today. Von Trier and Vinterberg passed the torch on them and gave their blessings. Okay, I have more thoughts about Dogville, but I don't know, but even though I will bring this up later on, but it sometimes reminds me of but the indie animation filmmakings of today, like the animation software had become a lot more easier to get access, even though some of them do cost money, but still, something like say Krita or maybe or any like a DaVinci Resolve, they're actually very free to use, and people are sort of using that to create animation. Mm-hmm. So, and we could probably just discuss whether we could probably discuss more further whether if sexual violence was necessary, but I usually assume that he usually shocked this thing the same way someone like Anton Arto shocked everyone with Bizarre Thing, or someone like Alejandro Jodorowsky and his Panic movement. Folks like Lon Topor and Fernando Arrabal, they do this very provocative things on stage just to get the rise out of people.
Well, here's the thing, though. I'm not shocked by it. It's more like I'm just bored because, for a long time there, everybody did it. It's not shocking when everyone does it. And I guess speaking as someone for whom sexual violence is a very real and tangible pain, I just don't like that it's always just used for drama, used for this. Like, I'm not shocked. I'm bored. There's a very big difference. And I don't like when people are like, oh, well, I'm just provocative. Look at you. I made you so offended. But I can't even muster the energy to be offended.
So there's like one scene. Yes, I'm gonna talk about the first rape scene with Stellan Skarsgård with this bare ass naked. Ugh. Yeah, I mean this is actually genuinely disturbing because considering there's no wall, everyone is like minding their business while this thing is happening. It's almost like how I don't know. There's like this term called bystander effect where even though it came from a misreported crime, like everyone is not doing anything while the crime is happening in front of their eyes. It just kind of gave me that vibe, and it really genuinely disturbed me.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I like the use of the distancing effect because that is how a lot of people treat sexual violence and victims of sexual violence. But I think to say that it is shocking and offensive, that was not my reaction. It was just more like, I'm tired of this. It's not the same thing.
And I think too that, this period, as far as the cinema of transgression is concerned, it was, this kind of 7-car pileup of people who were suddenly aware that the European cinema and the American cinema both had become very staid, that the risks that had been taken in the 70s had sort of been folded under the texture of popular movies in the 80s and 90s, whether that was, American action movies or middlebrow European films or Merchant Ivory movies or whatever. We were not in touch with, the kind of worst crimes of the films of the 1970s, whether that's like the Bertrand Blier movies about, these kind of happy-go-lucky thugs who run around Europe, making a mess of things, or, the rape revenge films of the 70s, or Hammer horror or something, where you could actually get away with, at least hinting at real transgression. And so Von Trier and Gaspar Noé and Eli Roth and all these, guys basically decided that they were going to bring it back, and for better or worse, they did. But in so doing, they rendered they rendered those statements essentially obsolete the minute that they made them, because once you have, in the case of Von Trier, very explicitly told people you are not paying attention to what is actually happening on the planet, then you have done that. And then, he literally tried to do it again with Manderley, and it's like, yeah, you can't do this twice. And it's, I think,
okay. All right, yeah, continue, Scout. There's something I want to bring up right
no,
after
of course.
you.
But I completely agree that whatever the sort of pioneering technique was, and definitely, something like Irreversible, like, yeah, it was a pioneering idea. It was really it really caught people. Robin Wood wrote a beautiful defense of that movie, but I hate that movie. I truly do. I find it so smug and terrible. And but again, other more enlightened opinions are available, and reasonable people can disagree. But I think when you make it your point to, make this kind of movie, as you're saying, Jay, about the bystander effect, you can only make that argument once, and he makes it 6 or 7 times.
Yes, that. I mean, is it? I'm sorry, Emmett. No, go ahead. But yes, thank you. That was basically the point that I was trying to make. Like, if everything's shocking, then nothing is shocking. Sexy works the same way. If everything's sexy, then nothing is sexy.
It's very true.
Sorry to have interrupted.
So, okay, what I'm trying to bring up is that originally I thought about pairing this episode. Okay, when I wrote down my pitch document, I wanted to do an episode with that and Manderley. However, I tried to think about the hypothetical conversation me and my co-host might have, but then I just realized, oh god, we would have a 4 hours tension about Manderley and its content.
Yeah.
Let's leave that out. So yeah, I mean, if you want to see Manderley, which is a sequel to Dogville, fine, but if the reason why I don't want to bring that up, because, well, read the premise for yourself. and there's a
Yeah.
lot of things to unpack, and that would take like 6 hours to do so. That's all I have to say as a producer.
So, one last thing. Unfortunately, you guys, you caught me on a semi-busy day, and I do have to sort of duck out here, which I feel bad about because I'm having fun. But the title Dogville comes from a series of, I want to say, Richard Fleischer produced um, comedy videos or series, short films made in the 40s and 50s. They were the Dogville Adventures, I want to say, and it was just like a little town where trained dogs are the people. So they have, they got dogs putting out fires, and they got dog chefs, and they got dog town meetings and stuff. And so Von Trier essentially wrapping up this sort of, like Faulknerian Americana with literal animals going about their lives as if they were human beings, which again speaks to exactly how much contempt Lars von Trier has for all of us. But again, as much as he tires me out sometimes, as tiresome as he is, as unproductive as I think a lot of his work is, I still do admire him, and I do think that even when you make Antichrist, I think you let everybody know exactly who you are and what you're capable of, and everybody has the right to simply recuse themselves from any further development. But for whatever reason, I hung on, and I was rewarded with a deeper glimpse into his soul, whatever's in there. And I have an unloved on the House of Jack built. I really like that movie. It's really dark, but I don't know. There's something about it that I find kind of winning. But yeah, sorry, everybody talk for another 5 minutes before I go. I just wanted to get out that last point.
All right. Actually, I wanted to segue into the original source for Dogville. I mean, even though Dogville is not an adaptation of like pre-existing work, but it is inspired from one poem or song written by Bertolt Brecht called Pirate Jenny.
What is Pirate Jenny? Pirate Jenny, or Suburban Jenny, is a song written by Bertolt Brecht with the music from Kurt Weill. They made this for their opera, The Threepenny Opera, a modern retelling of John Gay's opera, The Beggar's Opera, based on the German translation from Elisabeth Hauptmann. This, along with Mac the Knife, is one of the best-known songs in the opera. The song is about Spelunkin Jenny, who is based on the 18th century figure Jenny Diver, a maid at a crummy old hotel. She fantasizes about Black Freighter, the pirate ship with 8 sails, 50 cannons, and a skull on its masthead, destroying the town except the hotel, and executing all of the townspeople who had mistreated her. She then sails away with the pirates. In the original production of the book, The Threepenny Opera, the character Polly Peachum, a young bride of the criminal protagonist Mackie Messer, sings this song. She resents her grifter parents' opposition of her marrying Mackie and fantasizes about avenging herself on their constraints. In later productions, Kurt Weill's muse, Lotte Reiniger's character in the play Jenny sings the song, then tips off the police of her former lover Mackie's hiding location. Through this change, the song acquired its now familiar meaning of an oppressed woman's revolutionary fantasy. Her song also suggests that she likes the idea of leaving Mackie's fate in her hands. Much like how people knew Mac the Knife through Bobby Darin's cover, many musicians have covered Pirate Jenny. Nina Simone did a famous cover of the song during the 1960s civil rights movement as a metaphor for struggles of black people in the United States of America. Sasha Velour performed a version of the song in their short film Pirate Jenny, the first of their 2018 anthology $1 Drags, with lyrics altered to be about drag culture. Many writers gave the song their own creative spin. Comic book writer Alan Moore cited this song as one of the inspirations for Tales of the Black Freighter segments in his superhero deconstruction graphic novel Watchmen. The Nina Simone cover also plays during the end credits of the direct-to-video animated adaptation of that story, which serves as a side material for Zack Snyder's 2009 film adaptation of Moore's graphic novel. The 2019 HBO TV series sequel to the graphic novel, also titled Watchmen, has a police character named Pirate Jenny. In the third volume of Alan Moore's The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen series, Moore adapted Jenny's revenge fantasy as a literal event in which the character Johnny, Captain Nemo's daughter, summons her father's submarine and shoots her rapists and indifferent spectators. Another writer who gave their creative spin to the song Pirate Jenny is Danish filmmaker Lars von Trier. He turned Brecht's revenge song into a nearly 3-hour-long period piece about a small Colorado town that hides a young woman on the run, only later to betray her. To invoke Brecht's distancing effects, his crews built a minimalist set of small-town America inside the Swedish warehouse by drawing outlines on the floor with the white chalk, put up only a few walls and filmed with high-def digital cameras. The movie's main character, Grace, even muttered a line,
"Nobody gonna sleep here."
He casted actress Nicole Kidman to play the Jenny-like main character, and that movie is Dogville.
Yes.
So, Pirate Jenny, to give you an outline, it's about a maid named Jenny, and he gets exploited by her employer while working at the very rundown hotel. And there, at one night, there's a scream in the night. The pirate ship comes in with, the Black Raider with 50 cannons, and they come in, rescue Jenny, and she asks them to kill all the townspeople that mistreated her, and she was sailed away, and it was very popular. But it was one of the songs of this play. I'm holding a copy of this play right now, the Three-Penny Opera, and it was sung by two characters in the original book. There's a character named Polly Peachum, who is soon to be a bride for our main character, Mac the Knife, because she wants to escape from her exploitative parents, and her parents are like this. They're like part of this organized crime syndicate of beggars trying to steal money from other people, and then Mac the Knife he's a serial killer. That's all I could describe to him, and she wants to marry him, etc. And okay, sorry, I forgot about why she sang that song. It was more like she hates her parents so much that she would rather have them killed. And there's another version where this character named Janie Diver, one of Mac the Knife's old girlfriend, and she was very famously played by Lotte Reiniger, who was back then was the girlfriend of the play's composer, Kurt Weill. And they later get married like twice. Once while they're in Germany, and then they got divorced temporarily, and then they married again when they moved to America to flee Nazism.
He was also a Bond villain. She had a
she was in Russia with.
That's right.
I see you trained for the ballet.
But I grew an inch over the regulation height, and so.
And then you have had the 3 lovers.
What is the purpose of such an intimate question?
You are not here to ask questions. You forget to whom you're speaking.
I was in love.
And if you are not in love?
I suppose that would depend on the man.
Sensible answer. This man, for instance.
I cannot tell. Perhaps if he was kind and kulturny.
Corporal, I have selected you for a most important assignment. Its purpose is to give false information to the enemy. If you complete it successfully, you will be promoted. From now on, you will do anything he says.
And if I refuse?
Then you will not leave this room alive.
Yes, the great legend, and then that song would later be covered by Nina Simone, and her cover was my personal favorite, considering he added into like this deep, long history of American exploitation. It's almost like, how should I put it? It's like venting all out. Like, there's something cathartic about it, and
There's
haunting
also
at the same time.
Sorry.
Yes, what are you trying to say?
I was going to say there's also a delightful B. Arthur version as well that I sent you. And it was great. I also love that.
By the way, while watching that, I just realized that Grace is the 1930s equivalent to Funko Pop collectors, because she collects the porcelain dolls, like this old porcelain doll, which was a Funko Pop of that era.
Those awful figurines say more about the people in this town than many words.
If this is the town that you love, then you really have a strange way of showing it. All I see is a beautiful little town in the midst of magnificent mountains. A place where people have hopes and dreams, even under the hardest conditions. And 7 figurines that are not awful at all.
Calling Dogville beautiful was original at least. Grace was just casting one more look at the figurines she herself would have dismissed as tasteless a few days earlier. Since the town had agreed that everyone was to give according to his abilities, she received wages. Not much, but enough to save up for the first of the tiny china figurines from the row of 7 that had stood for so long gathering dust in the window of the store. And she dreamed that in time she would be able to acquire them all.
And anyway, those porcelain dolls will later be destroyed by Patricia Clarkson's character, who is also the wife of the Stellan Skarsgård character named Chuck.
Yeah. Well, I believe smashing them is less a crime than making them.
Vera, remember how I taught your children?
What?
Remember how happy you were when I taught your children about the doctrine of Stoicism and they finally understood it.
All right, for that I'm going to be lenient. I am going to break 2 of your figurines first. And if you can demonstrate your knowledge of the doctrine of Stoicism by holding back your tears, I'll stop. Have you got that?
In her lifetime, Grace had had considerable practice at constraining her emotions and would never have believed it would be hard to control them now. But as the porcelain pulverized on the floor, it was as if it were human tissue disintegrating.
Vera is her name. And also, I would like to publicly declare how much I love Patricia Clarkson.
Well, who doesn't?
Yeah,
So fantastic.
Trigger.
Yeah, like everyone really showed their range. That's a very impressive. That's what I like about this movie. Like everyone showed their range. Like, including Paul Bettany. Like on one hand, you see him like a very, very like a boyish innocence coming from him, but then as he goes on, he starts to talk like a very gaslighting, abusive person that you know in real life. And even that one time he mansplained Grace, and that was like that made me really frustrated. Like the last 15 minutes was the most frustrating experience. And like as you said, Meredith, it gets very frustrating for the rest of the movie.
Oh yeah, and I mean I pegged Tom very quickly as a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yep.
If almost 100 years later, he would be on Reddit just being like, why don't girls like me? I am an intellectual. I like that totally clocked him. And when he was like, you're sleeping with everybody but me, I was like, I knew it. I knew it. And Lars von Trier knew it too. Like I said, I don't hate and dislike this movie. Having criticisms about it doesn't mean like I'm going to go tell everyone to burn their copies and wipe it from the record or anything. I actually loved the staging, and I would actually really like to see more movies employ that technique with the soundstage. Like, I thought that was wonderful. I
It's not exactly the same thing, but I recommend the movies of Radu Jude, the Romanian director.
Oh yeah, Radu dude. His Dracula movie just came out.
Yeah, he's somebody who has unconventional ideas about staging and basically learned through doing theater that the things that used to make him excited about movies were less important than just sort of getting there and making your own ideas. There's a great moment in one of his new films, Continental 25, where the camera literally it's on autofocus and goes out of focus for a couple of like for 5-6 seconds. I was like, yeah, he doesn't give a shit about this. He just wants you to pay attention to the ideas. It's pretty good.
So I feel like Radu Jude is like a Romanian successor Jean-Luc Godard.
Very much, yeah. He's one of the most Godardian figures we have, or Oshima or Pasolini. He's one of the few filmmakers at that stage who can hold a conversation and actually has things worth saying about the direction of art, but also the direction of the political world. Okay, I do have to duck out. Thank you guys so much for being so patient with me and for listening to me go on and on and on.
No, it was wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Scout. It was good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Let's all stay in touch there. Meredith, let's keep that going. Emmett, it was really lovely to spend a little time with you and to get to know you a little bit.
Good. I really enjoyed listening to you, Scott. And even though you have to go, I just wanted to say I actually did for the first time a few years ago see The Baby of Macone, and I agree with what you say about the movie and Peter Greenaway for that matter.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, my God, I love Peter Greenaway. Speaking of Godard, I mean, that's a guy who really took every single piece of the cinematic apparatus seriously and sort of demanded a level of commitment and attention that I don't think many other people are willing to do. I'd be shocked to hear, or rather, I would really love to know what, if anything, he still watches. But I love Greenaway. Okay, so how do I exit out of this without hurting you guys? Do I hit stop recording?
No, just disconnect. Anyway, have a good night, Scout.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Scout, I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I am on Blue Sky, same name.
Okay, I'll make sure that we're following each other.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So making a movie without props and going back to this core basic, focusing more on the theme of human condition and the performance and theme and all that. It looks like it was made without any feeling of spectacle, like when you look at it and be amazed about the intricacies of set. And yes, Brecht, most of the Brecht theater works are like.
Who is Bertolt Brecht? Eugen Bertolt Friedrich Brecht, or Bertolt Brecht, was a German dramatist who started out as a World War I medic. Later, Brecht took a drama class, and he wrote his first full-length play, Ball, as a response to the Sturm and Drang-inspired expressionist play, The Loner, by Hans Jost, who later supported the Nazi Party. This initiated a lifelong trend to counter other creators' works. He then moved to Berlin in 1924, where he wrote The Threepenny Opera with Elisabeth Hauptmann and Kurt Weill, and began their lifelong collaboration. Around this time period, Brecht became friends with animator Lotte Reiniger and her husband, Karl Koch, who adapted some of Brecht's plays into films. As a former medic and political Marxist, Bertolt Brecht believed that theater plays could heal societal ills. Brecht wrote Lehrstücke plays, or learning plays, where audiences learned some political concepts by participating in an agitprop performance. Brecht has described his own work's dramaturgical dimensions as non-Aristotelian drama, in which they forego conventions of classical drama in favor of focusing on its core features. He utilized the Verfremdungseffekt technique, or the distancing effect, to prevent viewers from immersion and have them analyze the theatrical depiction of a social condition. He called this kind of play an epic theater, and later called it dialectical theater, which provides materialist perspectives on the modern world. However, his Marxist views have put him in jeopardy later on. When the Nazis came to power in Germany in 1933, Brecht fled his home country initially to Scandinavia. During World War II, he moved to Southern California, where he established himself as a screenwriter while also being surveilled by the FBI. In 1947, he was part of the first group of Hollywood film artists to be subpoenaed by the House Un-American Activities Committee for alleged Communist Party affiliations. The day after testifying, he returned to East Berlin, where he co-founded the theater company Berliner Ensemble with his wife, Helen Wagnall. Bertolt Brecht died on August 14th, 1956, of a heart attack at the age of 58. How much Bertolt Brecht has left his influence? To this day, many people perform Bertolt Brecht's plays. His unconventional, yet democratic approach to political storytelling has resonated with creators around the world. This has left some influences to not only playwrights like Tony Kushner, whose Pulitzer Prize-winning play Angels in America contained many Brechtian elements to explore the lives of queer Americans during the AIDS epidemic, but also to film directors as well. Brecht's colleague, Douglas Sirk, has used very artificial production design and ironic happy endings in his Hollywood melodramas to make his passive audiences think about their social themes. Sirk's admirer and fellow German filmmaker Rainer Werner Fassbinder has produced many movies and plays with Brechtian elements. As a young man, Fassbinder even starred as the titular lead role in Volker Schlondorff's TV movie adaptation for Brock's first play, Ball. Fassbinder's French counterpart, Jean-Luc Godard, has used Brecht's idea to rebel against conventional cinematic storytelling with frequent jump cuts, text on a screen, fourth wall breaks, and violations of the 180-degree rule, as seen in his first feature film, Breathless. Nagisa Oshima, whom many considered as the Godard of the East, used Brecht's distancing effect to have his audiences confront political themes in his cinematic works, such as Death by Hanging, which dealt with capital punishment and post-war Japan's treatment of its ethnic Korean minority. And finally, Danish filmmaker Lars von Trier has asked his audience not to be emotionally attached to his melodramatic movies by showing some shocking images and heightening the set's artificiality. And one of his movies is Dogville, which is his reimagining of Brecht's poem Pyrogeny and filmed in a Swedish warehouse with a white outline drawn on the floor instead of shooting on location in Colorado. The set of Dogville is supposed to represent the classic small-town America where everyone lives out their dream, but the walls are nearly non-existent, much like the Emperor's New Clothes.
That when you look at, like as I mentioned, the Three Penny Opera or Mother Courage and Her Children, and the Rise and Fall of City of Mahogany, they all have this text written on the wall that says, this says in this era and in this country. And here's the character named this, and here's the character named that. There's even a narrator. In this case, the narrator was John Hurt, the late John Hurt. So yes, the Brecht point is focusing more on the theme, but also we will take away that makes you feel pleasurable and get you immersed and be with these characters more, rather focus more on how the characters interact with each other and try to think about the world they're living in.
I'm actually going to disagree with you. I feel like the lack of spectacle in and of itself is a spectacle. As much as I love the staging, it does draw attention to itself by being different. I mean, I disagree with that point. That doesn't mean that I don't love it, but I do feel that's, I don't know. That's the point that I'm making, is that I think that the lack of spectacle is a spectacle.
But did it immerse you? Were you immersed into this, I don't know, like a near void of the world?
No, and I know that was on purpose because I am learning more about Brecht, thanks to you. But I did feel the disconnect, and it was interesting to juxtapose that with the fact that I actually went to my very first ever Houston Grand Opera show last week, and also really wonderful, beautiful set design. It's same time period, the 1930s. Very different location though. I saw Porgy and Bess, so that was Catfish Row, a fictionalized small black town in South Carolina versus a mostly white town in Colorado. But I wouldn't say that their set was minimal. This was a Houston Grand Opera, but it was still almost completely the same set the entire time. And with just some changes here and there to indicate changes in space. And I was fully immersed. Versus Dogville, which I feel is very operatic, just in terms of theme, despite the lack of music. It felt like a spoken opera.
They did use Vivaldi's music.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it wasn't sung, is the better way of putting it. It wasn't sung the way an opera is sung. And I didn't feel as immersed because of the black box element. So I thought that was very interesting. Just to kind of...
Are you aware that there is an opera adaptation of Dogville?
No, but that would make sense. That makes perfect sense.
Just the one thing I wanted to bring up. And some people compare the set with the set of Thorne Wilder's Our Town. And
I can definitely see that.
And people did ask von Trier if he was inspired by Our Town, but he said no. He only discovered Our Town after making this movie. And people even described this Dogville as the color negative or the underside of the same coin of Our Town. But
I can definitely see that.
Our Town is a bit more optimistic and very subtle about the cynicism of the American way of life and American nostalgia. But Dogville is just straight up very direct. And so yes, I'm gonna get to the point. The reason why I picked this movie, and in fact, the reason why some of the list of movies that I wanted to talk about tends to be, let's say, movies that were meant to be live action and perhaps won't work as an animation. That being said, what if I thought I was wrong? What if we could translate this idea into an animation? So, I did my research about is there animated movies with Brechtian theme and Brechtian elements. So far, I've seen few. And I mean few is there are only I say two creators, two animators, and I mean two creators. One is an actual animator, one is more like a TV producer. But they admitted Brecht as their influence, and one of them is an animator by the name of Devin Manny, and we know each other since few years ago. He worked at the School of Visual Art for a while. He teaches at the School of Visual Art for a while, and I've seen some of his short films, and I even showed it to you. One of which is The Wings, which is his recent film, and he admitted that he was inspired by Bertolt Brecht, Samuel Beckett, and Anton Chekhov, and he wanted to make it. He wanted to bring in something that probably won't work as animation in theory, but by being the capital T theater, it's just two guys talking to each other, and there are a lot of political elements to it. So I originally wanted him to come onto the show, but he has a medical emergency. So, as sort of a compromise, I did ask him is it okay if I send you some couple of questions and you could answer it back, and I could read your answer out loud. And he did, and I just got his answers today. So I asked him, why don't animators use Bertolt Brecht's Verfremdungseffekt, or the distancing effect?
What is Verfremdungseffekt, or the distancing effect? Verfremdungseffekt, or the distancing effect, is, as Brecht described it, performing in such a way that the audience was hindered from simply identifying itself with the characters of the play. Philosopher Walter Benjamin has said that Brecht's epic theater sets out not to fill the audience with feelings as to alienate the audience in a lasting manner, through thought, from the conditions in which it lives. He connects that with the Russian formalist approach of making a familiar object unfamiliar, as they call it, prium ostreniania. Literary critic and playwright Viktor Shklovsky believes that this is the essence and purpose of all art, and that people could look into its familiarity with a different perspective. Shklovsky has stated that art is a way of experiencing the artfulness of an object. The object is not important. Brecht was also inspired by Mei Lanfang's demonstration of traditional Chinese theater arts in 1935. He was impressed by its absence of a fourth wall that separates the stage from the audience, and an anti-naturalism of Chinese acting, where actors make use of symbolic gestures to help the audience visualize the setting in which the story takes place and the character's external feelings. Brecht uses this distancing effect to show the human in interaction with the larger forces and dynamics at work in society. He wants his observing spectators of these performances to analyze and take decisive action against real-life problems. For Brecht, theater performance shouldn't only be an emotionally immersive entertainment for people. He wants audiences to confront the real-life problems presented on the stage, allowing them to look at the social norms in a different way, and perhaps even try to change the world outside of the theater. What theatrical devices Brecht used to achieve the distancing effect? These artistic inspirations have led Bertolt Brecht to use various unconventional techniques to bring this effect. For every Brecht play, or any theatrical work inspired from Brecht that requires the distancing effect, it begins with a half curtain with the play's title written on it. He had a narrator to not only remind audience members that they are watching a theater play, but also spoil the upcoming scene and its ending. In that way, it removes any dramatic surprises, prevents audiences from getting emotionally involved in the story, allows them to analyze the lead-ups in a focused manner, and think about what could be done differently. The production has a projected text on the screen that describes the scene and its setting. Although this was often done as a cost-saving measure, it helped the audience to understand the scene's thematic context. Brecht used bright white lights to make stages clear to see for audiences, and made the theater stage like a sports arena. Music often featured in his plays to interrupt the flow, and tends to be folksy, with some influences from classical and jazz. Brecht has made actors play multiple roles, or have multiple actors play a character, and have them bring props on stage and change costumes in the middle of the scene transition. He also had actors speak to the audiences directly, either with spoken words or to hold a written play card, or say out their character's stage directions, so that the provoked audience could actively engage with the stage performance. They even break characters and comment on other characters' personalities, actions, and thoughts.
Compared to live-action filmmakers like Godard, Fassbinder, Rainer Werner Fassbinder and Lars von Trier, this is what he said. I think the main thing is because animation already inherently suspends the audience disbelief in a way that live-action doesn't. When you do create that distance, it never feels the same as when you do it in live-action or in theater. Don Hertzfeldt's work is a great example of this. When you animate, you are creating an entire reality for the viewers, so the distance never feels like it is breaking the fourth wall. It just feels like it is part of the created reality. So I'm gonna turn my question to you, Emmett. Would the premise of Dogville, along with its storytelling approach and the theme, would work in the medium of animation? I just wanted to hear your perspective as a trained animator.
Well, my immediate answer is yes. I do believe that it can be interpreted in animation.
I also asked if Devin Manny this question as well. Could the medium of animation purposefully prevent audiences from immersing themselves into the story? And how? And that's what he said. I think the way animation can do this, in spite of what I said in my previous answer, is through mixing mediums. I think this is happening a lot more right now, especially as it becomes easier to do so. And while there are a few cases in which it is kind of beneficial to the story or creates an intentional distance, most of the time, I think it's done because the filmmaker doesn't want to commit to the world they are building and wants to show off and play around. But I think if we are talking about how animation can break through its own proscenium art, I think that would be the way to do so. So again, back to you, Emmett.
Well,
if you're, let's just say that as a mixed media creator, as you know, you being you as my mentor, you talked about the whole mixed media, and Devin also brought up the mixed media. So I just wonder, even though it may be sudden, it may be immediate, if you're asked to adapt Pirate Jenny or the story of Dogville into an animation, how would you do it?
Well, first of all, I mean, the idea would be. Actually, I gotta let everyone know I have to talk a little quietly because my baby boy just went to sleep. So if I sound a little subdued right now,
Aw, congrats
thank you.
on the baby.
But to do a movie like Dogville in animated form, I think the benefit of it is that it would actually shock an audience, like on first glance, because you're basically setting up like a stage play. You're setting up a stage play, and people are used to seeing animation be like unlimited, be like completely unlimited. And so when I look at a movie like Dogville and like its setting there, like I think the thing that sticks out about the movie is how shocking it is to see it completely stripped away like that. So when you're asking if it could be interpreted in animation, absolutely. I mean, it could. So if I were asked to adapt it, my first thought would be it should be stop motion to preserve the like the physical nature of it, or even 3D. Like doing if you were to take 3D animation, take the 3D characters and put them in that environment, it would really shock your viewer. It would really shock them, like, oh my god, well, where's the balloons and up? Where's the big, elaborate setting there? So but actually I'd say a good example of something that does kind of strip away that is how familiar are you guys with Signa Bauman?
Yes, I met her few times at once. But I did watch her movie, my affair with marriage or something.
My love affair with marriage.
You are on your way to becoming a woman. There are simple rules for a woman to succeed in life. Beware of everything, especially men.
I did not exist before I met you. My soul was empty.
The moment Zelma fell in love with Sergei, her neurons started to release 3 neurotransmitters: norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine.
Your ass is sagging there, right under the cheeks. Without me, you wouldn't know your flaws.
If you plucked your eyebrows and wore short skirts, you'd be able to get a rich guy who would take care of you.
I'm a girl and have a girl repertoire. I'll be the best girl I can be.
Let's go. What a great day to get married.
So Signa Bauman, I would say, is a good reference point there, because her movies, like, they strip away like technical prowess in animation, and because she makes these like big sort of stop motion sets, and I have actually been to her studio and seen some of the sets themselves. They are set up almost like scenes from a stage play, and her co-writer, a guy named Sturgis Warner, is a theater director and a theater producer, and I have no doubt that he influenced her choice to stage her movie like that. So I mean, and
yeah,
but I would say any animated film that does kind of like break itself down and strip away what we're used to seeing is it definitely does play a part in its identity and how it does the storytelling. So I don't know if I like made this sound too intellectual or anything, but Dogville Yeah. Yeah.
It's a thought experiment, Emmett, because we are talking about an element that rarely done in animation, but and look, I mean, people have said that you cannot do Disney animation in live action, but how about, okay, I'm gonna think of some live action movies that cannot be done in animation, but what if it does? What if it does, even on the theoretical level? So, but yes. I just want to say that watching My Love Affair and Marriage is very Brechtian, and when it comes to like a setup and the storytelling approach, there are musical sequence, and there are some moments where narrators, educate
Yeah.
people
I
about certain
mean,
biological facts.
yeah. Well, I mean, in Cigna's defense, I mean, she's doing movies about subjects that are very personal to her, like based on personal experience, but at the same time, she's using the tools that she already has, like her own knowledge of hand-drawn animation, her own knowledge of stagecraft, which she shares with her collaborator. Um, she's mainly concerned with the kind of story that she's telling. So regardless of the tools that she's using whatever is at her disposal to tell that story. Now, with a movie like Dogville, I would say Lars von Trier is definitely more concerned with the story that he's telling than with technically how it's looking. Even though the dogma thing does show that he does care a lot about how it's made too. But Dogville, if anything, it might have even been like for him an experiment to see like if he could really just get you to focus on the actors, on the characters, and what's going on here. And as I forget who pointed it out, but there is that scene where I think the Nicole Kidman character is she's sexually attacked, and the fact that it's done like in what looks like a public setting, even though the characters are supposed to be behind walls, like it actually does kind of make you look at it differently. It does kind of like shock you a little bit, like like it makes it look like it's happening publicly, even though the actors are still playing the scene as if they're behind closed doors.
Yes, and this reminds me of one of Brecht's philosophical inspiration for his distancing effect, and he was inspired by the philosophy of Russian literary critic Viktor Silvsky. Sorry if I mispronounce his name. So Viktor Silvsky has, he's from the Russian formalism school, where, to summarize the philosophy, is trying to make familiar things unfamiliar, and that's where the estrangement thing originated from there. So Silvsky has stated that art is a way of experiencing the artfulness of an object. The object is not important. So he believed that this is the essence and purpose of all art, and people should look into this any familiar object with a very different perspective. And what von Trier are trying to do in Dogville is look into the old, very nostalgic, small, isolated American town with a very different perspective. Look into this ideal American dream with a very naked eye. Like, show its true nature, much like the outline of the dog finally forms into an actual dog. I'm not sure if you remember that at the end, which is a very interesting metaphor for the entire theme.
Whether Grace left Dogville, or on the contrary, Dogville had left her, and the world in general, is a question of a more artful nature that few would benefit from by asking, and even fewer by providing an answer. And nor, indeed, will it be answered here.
And Also, I wanted to bring out, like, there's one thing I want to mention. I want to ask Signe Baumann whether if she was inspired by Bertolt Brecht, but then she didn't respond. But I once thought about emailing her some questions whether if she was inspired by Brecht, but I decided not to send any questions for her, because I assume that she's very busy at the moment. But
yeah, she's currently working on her third feature film.
Yeah, I know. I'm very excited about it. I even donated some of my money to it. I'm one of the donor. So anyway, okay, yes, we in our movie, My Love Affair with Marriage, the setting, the interior, the exterior, even though they're all made with like paper maches and clays and all, they're supposed to look like a setting, the on-location setting, but they shape like one, they smell like one, etc., but they're not exactly that location, if you know what I mean. This is a very Brechtian approach that I've seen in animation, but also, while I'm also doing some research, I also look into the works of United Production America, or UPA, and I would say that some of the short can feel very Brechtian, like in a sense that everything feels abstract, and it deals with some more gray morality and makes you think about this oral theme, not from immersing yourself like you would immerse yourself in the Disney movie, but rather just to observe and trying to think and trying to look into what you're seeing on screen analytically. If there's one example I could say, like, if someone asked me if one of the ways I could like turn, say, Dogville or Pirate Jenny into an animation, that would probably look something like Rudy Tutu, the UPA short Rudy Tutu.
The People versus Frankie.
Frankie came down to the courtroom. She faced every rap in the book. Her lawyer was Jonathan the Bailey, known as Honest John the Crook. He was the man who was gonna prove that people were wrong.
Your Honor, we've had enough histrionics. It's an open and shut kind of case. We call to the stand the bartender of the joint where the crime took place.
I think it's Rudy Tutu. It's the adaptation of this song Frankie and Johnny, and it's like it does involve murder, infidelity, etc. But that's one of the that I probably thought of. But there's a one. I will finish it. So okay, but there's another one. Someone mentioned this very explicitly about Brecht, the one TV producer. So apparently, someone had pointed out how Brechtian BoJack Horseman feels. I'm not sure if any of you watched BoJack Horseman. I only watched like a retrospective series, retrospective video.
I love BoJack Horseman. I don't know if I see the Brechtian influence because of how absorbing they want to make the characters. Like, BoJack is a very, very, very messy person who screws up a lot in some really horrific ways, but they still want us to root for him to someday be a better person. I don't think I see the Brecht influence there, but I'm also not as familiar with Brecht as you are. So I'm not saying I'm right, but from what I understand and of his concepts, I don't see them pairing. Incidentally, though, Lisa Hannawalt, one of the animators from it, is on my list of people to discuss.
Sure. I mean, so what I'm trying to say that people tend to associate BoJack Horseman with Brecht because the character, like, since most of the characters are anthropomorphic animals, and that makes you more focused more on the character on its abstract, how should I put it? On its abstract, not as a whole person, like an actual real life person, but more as an abstract concept. And this is what the creator of this show, Ralph Bob Waxberg, he mentioned explicitly Brecht in this interview with the Vulture. So they were talking about this one particular scene where Bojack and this character named Jill Pill are conversing at this, I think, like a diner, and you see like a Hamilton poster and other like a Broadway show poster, but with pigs.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you remember that, but he even said he said that if I can't put on my really pretentious Bard College theater department playwriting major hat on, especially the way we use it, there's a little bit of Brechtian alienation effect. And by the way, this is after they talk about the use of puns and visual puns. It reminds you are watching a show. So the reason why everything is so pun-based and there's so many wordplays here and there is a way of reminding the audience that they're just watching a show. That's it. And that's how he distanced the audience from the world of BoJack Horseman. So
the creator clearly knows more about this than I do, and like I said, I can be wrong. I was wrong.
I mean, there's a lot of Brechtian elements I've seen in experimental animation, and also animated shows that has experimental elements like Neon Genesis Evangelion. Someone has been. I mean, Evangelion does have that theme that is common in Lars von Trier, considering him and Hideaki Anno have some history of depression and how that kind of messed their perception of human condition. If you've never seen Evangelion, that's fine, but for the listeners who are familiar with Neon Genesis Evangelion, you know what I mean. But that also sort of deconstruct the power fantasies involving mech, huge mecha. And someone had pointed out the end of Evangelion, someone had mentioned that there's a unintentional, and I mean unintentional, they never admitted, but there's like some elements of Stan Brakhage. It's a filmmaker that I like, and before I admitted to MS class, I was under the tutelage of Pilar Newton, and when I made a short film as an assignment, animated short as an assignment, and she compared my work with not exactly mentioning Brakhage, but she sort of compared my work with Brakhage's work, which I kind of feel proud of, because Stan Brakhage is a very interesting figure, and I also read this student paper, like I think a thesis paper written by this Iranian student that talks about there's this experimental filmmaker by the name of Robert Breer. Emmett, are you familiar with this guy named Robert Breer?
I am actually typing his name right now because I'm not familiar with him.
But you do know Brakhage.
Sam Brakhage, I know by name. I don't know the work as intimately well.
Okay, so yes, I'm looking at the paper right now. So Robert Breer has made some experimental animation where he could rotoscope things, and then that rotoscope animated character sort of evolving from like a photographic reel to just slowly devolving to a very abstract form. And that student saw that as a very Brechtian element. I mean, that's the best way I could summarize his paper. And honestly, I would say some of the animated stuff that I watched that only involving lines and abstract shape are in a way Brechtian, and I would like to see someone doing sort of telling a Dogville-like story or Pirate Jenny in that kind of story. There's one animated movie I like called The Girl Without Hands by Sebastian Ludenbach. And Ludenbach intentionally, how should I put it? because he has no budget, much like Brecht's play, it was made with very cheap on purpose, just to connect with, so that the people who doesn't have money they could stage the show for themselves. Brecht being a Marxist, he wanted his play for the lower class and by the lower class. So he has no money, but still managed to adapt Brothers Grimm into a feature animated film. And he does that just, no line test and, no pencil test, and just draw whatever he thinks in mind, just with some abstract lines and all. Yeah, I mean, I could go on. I could go very, very deep into it. There's a lot of animated film. I feel there's like a very Brechtian element. So, but Meredith, do you have any opinion about?
So you mentioned Hideki Anno earlier, and I will say I have watched all of the original round of Evangelion. I have not seen the stuff that he made after getting therapy, the rebuild. But I am at least familiar with original recipe Evangelion quite a bit. I love that show. I actually own the box set. It was dubbed right here in Houston. So, you're welcome, anime viewers. But man, that would be a good Pirate Jenny. Oh, he would be great.
Yes, and let's segue to Pirate Jenny itself.
I had one more.
So, yeah. Yeah.
That I was thinking about for Dogville as well. Alexander Alexiev and Claire Parker used a very, very, very difficult style called the pinhole technique to do an adaptation of Nikolai Gogol's The Nose. And while it was very comedic, the sheer the detail, but the jarringness of the style that they used, I feel, while it's not necessarily thematically Brechtian, I think could certainly work visually for that. It's available. It's on YouTube. If you look up Alexander Alexiev and Claire Parker, The Nose, it's free to watch. But I would say I would apply that to Dogville.
Okay. So let's say, how about the Dogville's proto version, which is Pirate Jenny by Bertolt Brecht. I pitched this one, so here's one confession. I wanted to adapt Brecht's The Three Penny Opera into animated film, and I think I mentioned that before when we talked about Thoroughbred, but there, I described the scene where Polly Peachum singing Pirate Jenny. So in that scene, it's more like a static shot of her, and then the camera slowly zooms onto her face, and while zooming in, there's a 20% opacity overlay of a silhouette animation that visualizes her song, Jenny being mistreated by everyone while she's scrubbing the floor, and all her employers giving a very low wage. I want it done in the style of Lotte Reiniger. The animator Lotte Reiniger, the woman who, perhaps the first woman to direct the animated feature film.
Who is Lotte Reiniger? Charlotte Lotte Reiniger was born in the Charlottenburg district of Berlin, Germany during the Second Reich era. During her youth, she built her own puppet theater shows based on fairy tales and watched Georges Méliès's special effect-driven films. These interests have led her to want to become an actress, but attending German expressionist figure Paul Wegener's lectures on the possibilities of animation found her a different passion. She later went to college to learn paper cutting and silhouette puppetry. Afterward, in the theater of Max Reinhardt, where her mentor, Wegener, belonged. She worked as a crew member of many of Wegener's film productions, including making elaborate title cards. Lotte Reiniger's creative collaboration with Paul Wegener got her admitted into the Institute of Cultural Research, an experimental animation studio. There she met her future creative partner and husband, filmmaker Carl Koch, and other avant-garde figures such as playwright Bertolt Brecht and his composer Kurt Weill. She worked on critically acclaimed animated short films and advertisements with Carl Koch, acting as the photographer of her stop-motion animated puppets. This garnered her a strong reputation in the burgeoning animation industry across continental Europe at that time. She was also involved in special effects for various feature films, such as animating a silhouette falcon in Kriemhild's dream sequence from the first part of Fritz Lang's epic Die Nibelungen. In 1923, Lotte Reiniger received a large bulk of raw film stock from her financier, Louis Hagen. Together, they decided to use it to make something that only a few people at that time had ever done, a feature-length animated movie. Reiniger adapted one tale from 1001 Nights, and that became The Adventures of Prince Ahmed. The movie was completed and debuted in 1926, which was over a decade before Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The biggest innovation that came out of Prince Ahmed was the multi-plane camera. Reiniger placed backlit planes of glass in front of a camera with a manual shutter to achieve a layered effect. Only in the 1930s would Walt Disney and Ub Iwerks develop a version of the multi-plane camera that would become a mainstay of traditional animation. Prince Ahmed also featured the early depiction of a same-sex relationship in animation. Reiniger was also an outspoken supporter of gay rights and wanted to destigmatize homosexuality by including a representation of a loving gay couple. Unfortunately, this was censored in the theatrical version. Then, when the Nazi Party came to power, Lotte Reiniger and Carl Koch decided to emigrate due to their left-wing politics. They frequently moved from one country to another and worked with other filmmakers in each country where they stayed. The couple moved back to Berlin again to take care of Reiniger's sick mother, and Lotte was forced to make propaganda films for Nazi Germany. For her, she had to work in a creatively limited condition. After the Second World War, Reiniger and Koch moved to London, and she made some advertisement shorts. By 1935, Reiniger and Louis Hagen Jr., the son of the financier of Prince Ahmed, founded the Primrose production and continued to make silhouette animated films. After Carl Koch died in 1963, along with the renewed interest in her work, Lotte Reiniger returned to Germany. She continued to make animated films until she died in Dettenhausen, Germany on June 19, 1981, at the age of 82. Lotte Reiniger's silhouette puppetry, innovation in filmmaking, and showing many possibilities of animation have left a positive mark on animators even to this day. French animator Michael Oslet was very inspired by her style, and the character designs and layout in his filmography share artistic characteristics with hers. The Lotte file format for vector animation, which is considered by many designers to be the best website animation format, is named for Reiniger. In 2024, Reiniger was posthumously awarded the Winsor McKay Award at that year's Annie Awards in recognition of her unparalleled achievement and exceptional contributions to animation.
Emmett, you familiar with Lotte Reiniger, right?
With which one?
The director of The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, Lotte
Reiniger.
Yeah, Lotte Reiniger. Are you familiar with her work?
Yeah, I am.
So, the reason why I picked her because she's friends with Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill. Or more like her husband, Carl Koch. Carl Koch worked with Bertolt Brecht a few times. They're more like colleagues. And through that, she knows him. And that actually made me wonder if Nazis never came to power and, if none of the Second World War happened, I wonder how Brecht would saw animation. I wonder how he would dabble animation. I mean, he did dabble film a few times. He wrote a screenplay for one Hollywood movie, and he kind of involved in the film adaptation of the Three Penny Opera, but however, he kind of disowned it because how much the director tempered a lot. But at least they brought back the original cast, I think. Interesting enough that one of them is played there's one minor character and he's played by Antonin Artaud, the French playwright. So yes, what I'm trying to say is that you see a silhouette animation of Pirate Jenny being played out, and on the second half, Polly Peachum makes this Kubrick stare and stares at the viewer, and that's where we see the grisly part where pirates comes in and destroying the town, and Jenny leaves the harbor with the pirates, and that's how the song ends.
I mean, I'm not as immediately aware of that, but it does make sense that Lottie would have would have tried to adapt, anything from stage work at that point, because I mean, you have to understand, whether she was aware of it or not, she created the first feature length piece of animation, and this was at a time when animation being adapted to such a long form was still experimental. It was still considered a fine art, even by the standards of European cinema.
Yes, and
so looking back, it's possible. I mean, that was a time when anything went as far as like what animation was capable of, and anything went as far as what filmmaking was capable of. I mean, because whereas in America, film was starting to become a business, in the rest of the world, especially in the European countries, it was still an art form. It would be years before that cinema would have its own identity in Germany and other countries.
So, are you aware that Lotte Reiniger also did the dream sequence in first long adaptation, Die Notbildung? Sorry if I mispronounced his name, but it's Fritz Lang did a 4-hour epic about the Siegfried, the German folk hero, and Fritz Lang. Lotte Reiniger animated the dream sequence, a dream from Siegfried's wife, Kriemhild. Like, she was having this dream-like prophecy about involving eagle, or I think hawk or something, and it was very beautiful. Like, I mean, sure. First
I'm
Lang is a
not totally
visionary.
aware of this.
No?
So sorry. I feel like I might have interrupted it somehow.
So yes, what I'm trying to say is that her animated sequence in the first long movie. And what I'm trying to say, it was very beautiful, and come to think about it, it's actually very fitting with my own take on Pirate Jenny. But Meredith, what's your take?
I already said everything I wanted to say. But I'm not.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
not
we sort of
disagreeing
talked
about Lotte Reiniger. I think that was a beautiful choice, but I think that you much more knowledgeably applied what I would have said. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I think she'd be a beautiful choice, and I'd be interested in seeing her approach as well.
Either use the audio of Lotte Reiniger's singing, or maybe my favorite choice, Nina Simone. But even though it's I don't know, considering it's set in Victorian England, and I'm not sure it would be appropriate to use Nina Simone.
I do have one thing I'd like to add.
But
we've talked
Yes.
about how difficult it was to find an animator who would be able to handle Dogville, and I told you that I had a surprise for you. I wish I could say this before while Scout was still here, but honestly, I would really like to see what you do with it, Jay. I feel
Actually,
I
yes.
feel like
And
Go
in
ahead.
fact, so remember the time I talked about I wanted to do experimental animated take on Titus Andronicus? That would be my Brechtian attempt to do Brecht. I described it as a free-form remix of Titus Andronicus, and it has a strong anarchist politics, in the sense that I want to make the audience question the idea of institution and the idea of civilization itself, and especially the binary between civilization and
No, I mean, I
barbarism.
feel like you understand this material on a very passionate level. I mean, I'm a dilettante, and I
And also have the audience to deconstruct the spectacle put on the screen. Like, have them deconstruct it in an analytical way. Instead of me spoon feeding. And this is my occasional pet peeve with animated movies, even the good ones, that they spoon feed theme for you. They just think it out for you. I don't want that. I want, audience to think it for themselves. Have them look at the movie and think and analyze by themselves. That's what the Brecht.
Sorry, Jake.
That's what the Brecht had wanted with his theater, and then I wanted to carry that spirit, and that's also what the Von Trier wanted to do with Dogville. And Emmett, what are you trying to say?
Well, I'm sorry. Well, first of all, I think I can put in maybe 5 more minutes here. 'Cause I'm afraid I'm gonna have to drop out of here. But
okay. Yeah, we're probably ending in 6 minutes.
Yeah, well, what you're basically describing, what it sounds like you really want to find is the way to put spontaneity into the animation process. Am I correct in assuming that?
Oh, so could you like elaborate a bit on whatever the time you're available?
So I mean, animation, like the traditional way to do animation production and narrative animation, it's a very tightly controlled medium. I mean, everything, as you said, is planned, is pre-planned, and we are spoon-fed scenes that have a great deal of planning to them that there's actually not really a great deal of room for spontaneity in it. But I don't know, recently I actually completed a project a couple years ago. I animated a second of animation every single day for a whole year. And in doing so, I found a way to be spontaneous with animation. And so since then, I've actually been kind of like, my ears kind of perk up anytime I hear another animator or filmmaker describe like, constructing their films like without any planning, like on the spot, like, oh, I just started to draw, I just started to animate the scene, I didn't have any story, like I don't really care like how the story comes off, and I'd rather the audience just be placed in it or something. And their description of it might sound pretentious, but I think I've become a lot more fascinated by it. And I can, at some point, if you're ever interested, I can give you a list of films that have this kind of spontaneity to it, that have this kind of like anti-traditionalist way of making the film. And
yeah,
I mean, it sounds like this is maybe something you're trying to capture, especially if you want to like do something based on Samuel Beckett and even Dogville's sort of format as well. I mean,
okay,
I don't
here's
know.
the one thing I want to share. I thought about hopefully in this podcast future, I want to talk about Gaspar Noé, because he makes movie in a very spontaneous manner. Scout brought up Gaspar Noé before and with Irreversible, but I want to talk about his movies later in the feature, because he does work in a very spontaneous manner, but the way he worked with the actors in a spontaneous manner is also fascinating to me. And I wonder if it's possible if you could incorporate improvisation in animation. That was also the question I wanted to ask to Devin, and we didn't go into in depth, but hopefully I could have him on and talk about it in depth.
Yeah, I was
Meredith, what are you trying to say?
Emmett, I'd like a copy of that list too, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I'll start making the list, and I'll I'll send it to Jay, and I'm sure he'll send it to you, Meredith.
Yeah, thank you. I'd appreciate that.
So okay. I was expecting Emmett to read it out loud, but so we got like
I can give you a few titles that are on it. I mean, but like I'm just naming them off the top of my head.
So yes, I do it. Since you got like a few minutes left. I think
All
this is
right. Well, I guess okay. Well, I guess one of the first things I'd mention is anything animated by Greg McLeod. He works with his brother Miles. They work as the brothers McLeod, and a lot of their stories are kind of like just sort of spontaneously constructed. His most recent short film is called Me and Bird, and it's really just it's him animating this imagined conversation, and there's no real beginning, middle, and end. It's just like this imagined conversation that he's having. And I think he said he was inspired because he was recovering from surgery, and it was something he sort of like started coming up with on the spot during his recovery. And another example is there was an Irish animator named David O'Reilly, who does these 3D films that are they don't look finished. They very deliberately don't look finished. And he just like completely deconstructs the whole 3D thing. He works in games now. He doesn't do narrative animation anymore, but he did a film called The External World that it's just a series of random vignettes done in the style, and it's a 17-minute film, very funny, but at the same time, like I think he's sort of letting us come up with the meaning behind it. He's not telling us what the meaning is behind it. He's basically just saying this is 3D animation, it's funny, but like, what are you looking for in it?
Okay. And okay, there's few things I wanted to finish up, but I also asked Devin Manny that this question as well. I'm gonna read it out right now. Probably the reason for the lack of Brechtian animation is because there are no big animation studios that would produce such. Then what kind of studio system would allow animation teams to make Brechtian animation? This is what he said. I mean, there is also little cinema doing this in general right now. Certainly not in the US. But I think it's more of a taste issue than a medium-specific one. The beauty of animation is that its main input for production is how much time the animators have to work on it. It doesn't really cost anything. You don't need a crew, you don't need to build or rent space or equipment. There will be almost certainly never be a studio in this country willing to bankroll animation that veers from its current hegemony. But the beauty of the animated form is that really cool, unique work can be created for nothing. It just takes time and passion. And I think, Emmett, that's also what you're trying to say. I mean, at least I feel like the animators that you had mentioned also follow that similar spirit.
This seems to be a thing that I notice right now, especially with a lot of the animators of my own age group, is we're the older we get, is like what do we want to get out of being animators? What do we want to get out of this art form? And I'm actually very happy right now that a lot of the people that that I went to school with, the people that are sort of my own peers, are starting to explore that. And they're like, they're starting to realize nobody's going to pay you to explore. Nobody's going to pay you to find out what this art form is capable of. You really have to do it yourself. And as a result, there's actually a lot of really good work that is out there right now that is hitting the film festival circuit and hitting YouTube and everything. And the truth is, this kind of work is out there. You the viewer have to seek it out, because there's no big studio out there that's directing you to it.
Hopefully for the next season, we will talk about like low budget independent animation more, and how filmmakers use, even in spite of the lack of resources, they could tell stories what they wanted to say. And I feel like in the rise of the indie animation pilots hitting on YouTube, I feel like people are either wanting to recognition from the established industry, or they are building a new alternative industry for themselves. and hopefully, I know if I was a trained animator from start, I really wish I could make my own animated short or feature film, either based on a Brecht's work or has a very Brechtian theme to the point it feels very unusual, very unconventional. But so Emmett, did you said what you really wanted to say? Like, did you say everything that you wanted to say?
Pretty much, yeah.
So yes, one last thing. So Meredith, you mentioned about, back when we did the first episode, you mentioned about wanting to do an animated take on the Five Obstructions. So for those of you who don't know, Five Obstruction is a documentary that Lars von Trier and his mentor, the late Jürgen Less, that directed, where von Trier challenged Less to remake his live-action short in 5 different conditions, and one of them being remake into a cartoon. The reason why he picked that up, because they just don't like animation. And Jürgen Less just went to Austin, Texas and hired animator Bob Sabatson and hired him to do the animation based on like his storyboards and concept art, and actually it came out very beautifully. And you mentioned about how it started out like a direct-to-video style like a animated mockumentary, and then it changed to like a Muppet.
Yeah,
I just realized that is very Brechtian.
Good.
Because this jarring nature, it makes you just sit back and just try to process what was going on.
Oh.
And it forces you to think about the theme and try to analyze why these people don't like animation. You even mentioned how you mentioned that what you're trying to convey with that direction makes audience to analyze the medium hierarchy and deconstruct it.
I think you're giving me more credit than I probably deserve, but I appreciate the analysis. I don't think you're wrong.
I don't know. It was something I just realized while I was doing the research for Dogville and Bertolt Brecht. So conclusion, I feel like if there's one thing that we can all learn from Lars von Trier, even if you disagree with his worldview, is that try experiment with a very few limited resources and try tell stories. And I feel like animes are doing that. Don't you agree, Emmett?
Yes, I do agree with that. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to jump off right now, but yeah.
Yes.
I mean.
So thank you for having with us. It's really nice to meet you too, as well.
It was nice to meet you, Emmett.
All right. Yeah, it was great to meet you too, and yeah, this was certainly interesting. I kind of want to watch the Dogville movie again now. But overall, thank you for having me here, Jay. And yeah, I hope to hear more from you in the future. Okay, then. All right. Good to meet you, Meredith.
You too. Have a good night.
So yes, Meredith, thank you for having with me this time, and hopefully we could do more often next year. And I actually plan ahead of time. Can you believe it? We will talk about two of your choices. Two of your pitches.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Like I mentioned before, I usually pick movies based on how it could work well. I mean, why it might sounds impossible to do in animation, but what if everyone is wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if everyone is right? You know what I mean? It's just we're just discussing on the hypothetical.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything is outside of being animated. We can make it work no matter what.
Yes, that's how I usually pitch the episode, and even though it seems like you're doing a bit the opposite way, but we could talk about that later tomorrow, where maybe I virtually invite you to my potluck party on New Year's Eve. I hope you can make it. Hopefully, I
never know what my schedule looks like. I won't know my New Year's Eve schedule until New Year's Eve.
Well,
my life
okay. Spoiler: we are not recording on the New Year's Eve, but
okay.
I will give you some detail. I will send you some detail.
Okay, please do.
Yes. Anyway, good night, everyone, and see you later next January or something. Bye.